it's time to predict what is probably the best league in the world. Yes, we are taking a look at the Premier League. Now, a quick disclaimer, I am currently recording this on Sunday the 6th of August. I'm not sure when this video will release, probably pretty close to then, but any transfer information that's happened post that will not be featured in this video, which could alter where these teams end up. But from the 6th of August, this is where I think every Premier League team will finish in the 23-24 Premier League season. We're going to jump right into it, and in 20th place I've got Luton Town. Now, it's a fairy tale story for Luton, as probably one of the greatest stories in world football, but unfortunately I cannot see this fairy tale having a happy ending. They've been active in the window, to be fair to them, but it doesn't seem like they're building a capable squad for the Premier League. It is a very solid Championship squad, but the step up from the Championship is huge when you join the Premier League, and I'm not sure Luton Town are ready for that. I do see them grabbing some shock results throughout the season, and I think their home form will definitely be what grabs them the majority of their points, as I'm not sure a lot of teams will be ready to go to Kenilworth Road. But I can't see Luton Town surviving this season at all. I do think they'll grab a couple wins here and there, but I don't think they'll be very successful other than that. Then in 19th place, I've got Sheffield United, and the Blades came up automatically by finishing runners-up last season, but have not done much business and even sold some of their best players, with the likes of Liman Nidai to Marseille. They performed very well last season, but that was with Nidai grabbing 24 goals and assists throughout the season. Without him, and them not bringing in a worthwhile replacement, I cannot really see Brewster filling that gap, so I think they're going to struggle for goals this season, and it's just going to be a very tough season all in all for the Blades. They do not seem to have prepared themselves for the Premier League whatsoever. Really, they've spent little bits here and there, and they got quite a nice paycheck, but they've not bought in anyone worthwhile from what I've seen. In fact, they've probably got a weaker squad than they had last season, so it's not looking good for them either. They could honestly switch with Luton Town, to be honest. It's going to be a battle between those two for who can finish bottom, I think. And then in 18th place, I've got Everton, the team that have never been relegated. Well, I think this is their season. Everton just survived last season by 2 points, but despite this, they haven't really strengthened their squad, and arguably it looks weaker than it did last season. They've sold Moise Keane and Ellis Sims, and while Keane didn't play for them last season, he still bagged a handful of goals in Syria and probably could have done a bit of a number in the Premier League, but they let him go, and fair enough. They've done barely any business as well, with Danjuma being the only real arrival of note. I mean, they got Ashley Young on a free, but don't think he's going to be doing much for Everton to keep him up, to be honest. And that's not to mention they'll also be moving into Browningmoor Dock this season too, which won't have that same fortress feel that Goodison has, or Goodison can have. And to be honest, I can't really see Dyche saving them this season. They do have a very decent squad, I will give them that. Some brilliant Premier League quality players, but with the way they're looking at the moment and the business they've done, I think they're going to get relegated. They've been around the relegation zone for a couple seasons now, and eventually they are going to drop. And I think this is the season they drop. And in 17th place, I've got Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, it's not looking good for Wolves. They've actually survived quite comfortably last season, but with the lowest scoring side in the league, only scoring 31 goals, and the business they've done does not seem to remedy that issue. You'd have thought, if you're struggling to score goals, you'd sign a goal scorer, but apparently not in the West Midlands. They've lost the likes of Ruben Neves, Conor Cody and Raul Jimenez as well, and they've not really replaced them either. But that's not to discount their squad. They do possess a very talented squad despite the departures they've seen, and I think they'll ultimately survive. There are some issues going on behind the scenes though, with Lopetegui allegedly considering his position as the manager of the club. That remains to be seen whether he'll actually leave or if he leaves later on in the season, which is, very possible. It's going to be a tough season for the West Midlands outfit, but I do reckon they'll just survive. But it's going to be very tight between them, Everton, and the side I've got above them in West Ham. So in 16th place, I've got West Ham United. Despite winning the Conference League, it's not been a great summer for West Ham, as they're the only Premier League side, as of recording, to have not signed any players. And that's with barely a week to go as well. It's not looking good for them. This is compounded by the reports of tension between David Moyes and technical director Tim Steiden? I'm not sure how you say his name. They sold their best player for 105 million, which is brilliant business. They've got a big chunk of change they can use to invest in the squad, but they've yet to do anything with it. They're consistently missing out on transfer targets as well. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes at West Ham, but whatever it is, it's not good for the club. I do think they will sign at least one player before the window closes. Despite the issues going on in the transfer window, they do have a strong squad still, and the turmoil behind the scenes, however long it rumbles on, will definitely cost the squad. It'll cost the team. If there's any tension between West Ham and David Moyes, I think the players will feel that in the dressing room. and it may affect performances as well. Plus they've got more European football to focus on, so it's going to be a tough season for West Ham, but I reckon they'll still survive. It'll be interesting to see if Moyes goes though, because there were times last season where he was on the brink, so it's very interesting to see what will happen there. And then in 15th place, I've got Burnley. Now, Burnley won the Championship in quite emphatic fashion last season and secured automatic return to the Premier League. Under Company, they played some lovely, fluid attacking football, and they've also recruited well in the summer. It's very much a new look Burnley side to the one that was relegated 2 years ago, and people who've not been keeping tabs in the Championship will probably be very surprised with how this Burnley side plays. It'll be very interesting to see how they adapt to the Premier League, as the league is a massive step up compared to the Championship, as I've mentioned with Luton. For some reason, I can see them adapting well and surviving quite comfortably. I think company ball is going to go hard in the Premier League. I'm not sure if it'll be as effective as it was in the Championship. I doubt it. I can still see them getting some big shocks against some pretty tough teams. So I'm backing Burnley to survive, to be honest. I think they'll do all right. And then in 14th place, we've got Nottingham Forest. Now, Forest signed 30 players last summer, but it worked. We stayed up. And this summer has been quite a bit, less eventful, you could say, with a few additions we've made. Saying that, it should put us in a better position to kick on earlier in the season. One of the major issues we faced last season was getting so many players to gel and play football together, and eventually that did come good, and now attention turns to that dreadful away form we've been experiencing. Despite some not great results in pre-season, new signing Aina looks great, and Alanga looks like the perfect player for a Steve Cooper revolution. We just need to sort out that goalkeeper position, but there are rumours of Kasper Schmeichel and Matt Turner being signed, so we'll have to see what happens there. But I think this season, Forest, we're going to perform well, get some more results away, and I think we'll survive quite comfortably. I hope so, at least. God damn, this football club, it does things to me, man. And in 13th place, I've got Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth had an odd season last season. They were top half in the relegation zone, but ultimately ended up surviving quite comfortably. The Cherries have appointed Andoni Iraola as their manager for the upcoming season, and has seen his signings come through to the Cherries. They've really secured signings for their manager. The football they play will look much different to how it did under O'Neill and under what's his face. Oh man, I forgot his name. Yeah, well, I do see them being safe and being able to cement themselves in the league despite a very different style of play. We could even see a cup run from them, as we saw from Menendez under Iraola in La Liga. I think they were a second league side at that point. But hey, they went on a little Copa del Rey run and got to the quarterfinals, so we could see something similar from Bournemouth here. I did make the mistake of underestimating them last season, and I'm not going to be doing that again. They're building a very solid side, and I'm sure they'll slowly begin to climb up the table in the following seasons. I think they got a 13th place finish this season though. And in 12th place, I've got Crystal Palace. Palace had an interesting season last time out. I think that's the best way to put it. They were struggling to score goals under Vieira. They dragged Hodgson back, and the goals, they flew. They opted to keep Hodgson on for another season, and will be hoping they can start scoring goals from the off. The Eagles have not been too active in the window, however, and have also seen the departure of Zaha as well. But Palace do have a very solid squad, and I don't see them needing to do that much business to still be able to compete. That's why they've only signed a couple players. I think the main point of contention for though is Eze and Elise. I've seen them linked with a few Premier League clubs and a few foreign clubs, so should Palace be able to keep them, I can see them cooking this season. But those are the two players they really need to be focusing on securing for this season and then the future as well. And then in 11th place, I've got Fulham. Just missing out on the top half of the table is Fulham. They've managed to shirk the yoke of being a yo-yo club, and I can see them continue to survive in the Premier League. There were some issues with Mitrovic. He wanted to leave the Cottagers, and they even received bids from Saudi Arabia, but even after that they didn't allow him to leave, and now it seems like he'll be staying put, but obviously there's a couple more weeks to go in the window, so that could change. Other than that though, Fulham have been fairly active in the window, strengthening their already solid side with the likes of Raul Jimenez coming in. It was a very interesting signing for Fulham, and will be brilliant for the club if he can recapture any of the form he showed earlier in his career. I know he's not really been the same since the incident happened, but if he can capture even a glimmer of that form, he's going to be a good signing for Fulham, and I'm sure they'll be fine this season as well. And in 10th place, I've got Brentford. It's going to be an interesting one for Brentford, as Ivan Toney is set to be out for a large chunk of the season. The Bees will definitely struggle without their top goal scorer, and they haven't really signed a replacement for Toney either. But to be fair, they don't really need to. Both Mbeumo and Wissa were the Bees' other two top scorers last season, and the introduction of Sade will bolster their attacking ranks quite well. He's gonna do well for Brentford, I suspect. I do think they'll drop down a place due to the absence of Toney, He was a massive player for them last season, but I don't think it will completely derail their season. They also look to lose Raya to Arsenal as well, which is going to hurt them as well. I'm not sure who their reserve keeper is, but he's not as good as Raya in my opinion. Well, I think it's a fact really. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, but it's going to be an interesting one for Brentford. I think they'll just drop down slightly. And then in 9th place, I've got Brighton. Now, Brighton performed very well last season and earned themselves a spot in the Europa League, and they've also been very active in the market as well, seeing some big departures like Alexis McAllister and Robert Sanchez, but they've won a lot of players with the likes of João Pedro, Mohamed Dahoud, and of course, James Milner. They've added some much needed depth to compensate for those European matches, which I see them doing quite well in as well. They already had a very strong high scoring squad under De Zerbi, and they've only improved it in my opinion. I do see them declining in the league as they have Europe to focus on, but I think they do well in Europe. I think they can deal with sliding down the table a bit. I think that's probably acceptable. But yeah, Brighton are cooking this season. I've heard they've got some more signings in the pipeline, so we'll have to see what happens there, but yeah, they're building something special. And in 8th place, I've got Aston Villa. Just like Brighton, Villa have secured European football, namely the Conference League. And also like Brighton, I have them sliding down the table with Europe to focus on. Villa and Emery are cooking something special just like Brighton, with the likes of Moussa Diaby, Pau Torres and Yuri Tielemans all joining the club this summer. And they haven't seen any of the big players depart either. They're definitely building something special, but I think that with European football on their plate too, they'll drop a position in the league. But as I said with Brighton, I think that's very acceptable. If you do well in Europe, you can stand slightly dropping down in the domestic league, especially when it's your first European tour in quite a while. So I expect Villa to do well in the league. I expect them to do well in Europe as well. I think Emery's a brilliant manager for them. He's really revolutionised the club. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Villa perform this season. But again, they're also building something quite special, I feel. So yeah, I've got them finishing top half, definitely. And then in 7th place, I've got Tottenham Hotspur. Spurs. What a club, eh? It was a season forget for Tottenham as they slumped to an 8th place finish, but they brought in Ange Postecoglou and are hoping he can turn around their fortunes. This prediction does hinge on whether or not Harry Kane stays. Bayern are confident they'll sign him, but Tottenham are Tottenham, so who knows. I'm sure that instead of getting like 100 million for him, they'll let him go on a free next season for some bizarre reason. I don't know, and I don't think Tottenham fans know either. Spurs have strengthened their squad with James Maddison and Pedro Porro coming in and Kulusevski being made permanent, as well as a whole host of players returning from their loan spells. It'll be interesting to see how Spurs perform in the league and if Ange can get them cooking. I do think, like his time at Celtic, it'll be a very slow burn to start off, but should he be afforded time, I'm sure Tottenham are going to cook under the Aussie manager. I see a slight improvement from last season, and then they can build on that in the seasons to come. But yeah, I think it'll be quite a slow season for Tottenham to begin with. But they'll slowly begin to build, I reckon. So yeah, I don't think they'll achieve Europe. Well, I don't think they'll achieve the Champions League in Ange's first season. They're definitely not going to be challenging for the top 4 or top 6, but they can definitely make 7th. I definitely see them achieving that. And in 6th place, I've got Chelsea. Now, where do I start with Chelsea? To say they've been active in the window would definitely be an understatement. It was also a season forget for Chelsea as they found themselves lower mid-table in 12th place. I do see this season being a huge improvement for the Blues. They've hired Pochettino and given him a huge war chest to bring in practically any player he wants. That's what it looks like, at least. They've performed well in pre-season as well, and without any European football to divert their focus, it gives Chelsea the perfect chance to rebuild and focusing on climbing the league table and improving domestic performances. I'm sure it'll be a marked improvement for Chelsea, but I don't see them changing for the top 4 just yet. I think they'll just be outside that top 4 race, but it gives them a good platform to build on for next season, and then they can push for top 4 after that. But yeah, I think just this season, I think it's a bit of a rebuild season for Chelsea, just like it is for Tottenham. So they won't do too well in the league, but a 6th place finish is nothing to scoff at. I'd take that every day for Nottingham Forest. So yeah, I think they'll finish 6th, not challenging for the top 4 just yet, but rebuilding so that they can in the coming seasons. And in 5th place, I've got Newcastle United. Now, Newcastle United have risen to the Champions League after a very successful season. Eddie Howe's done a wonderful job so far with the Magpies, and he's been backed in the transfer window too. The Magpies have been very smart with their business, as they have been since Eddie Howe was brought in, with the likes of Sandro Tonali and Harvey Barnes being the 2 big arrivals, with Tino Livramento also being close to arriving. St Maximin has left for Saudi Arabia, but Barnes will be able to fill in his position, and honestly I think he'll perform better than St Maximin, but I do love St Maximin. He's a brilliant player, a joy to watch. I've got Newcastle dropping down purely because of the Champions League and that diverting their focus, but like I said with the other clubs, it's their first European outing in quite some time, so I'm sure fans will accept a drop in the table for some good performances in Europe. I do see them dropping out of the top 4, but still being able to keep pace with those top four. As I said, you know, they've got Champions League diverting their focus, but Champions League football at St James's Park is just going to hit. Like, I back them to do quite well in Europe, to be honest, but yeah, I think they'll do quite well in the league as well. I don't think they'll break top four this season. I think they'll just be below it, but yeah, they'll definitely keep it competitive and keep challenging for sure. I think top six is pretty much nailed on for Newcastle this season. Then in fourth place, I've got Liverpool. Now, Liverpool have been through a big clear out this summer with a lot of their aging players departing, mostly to Saudi Arabia. They've not brought in a lot of players, but the players they've brought in are pretty good, with the likes of Dominic Szoboszlai and Alexis McAllister coming through the doors, with Lavia also being worked on. It was Liverpool's midfield that desperately needed to be worked on, and those two additions to that will markedly improve it. Like, they're going to be so good for Liverpool. I can see them returning to the top four alongside the Europa League football they're playing. You know, they're a team that's used to playing in Europe, challenging for top four, and I think they'll do that again this season. It was kind of a blip last season for Liverpool, but they're at a crossroads, so it's another sort of semi-rebuild season for them as well, but I can see them doing quite well this season and returning to a top four spot. And then in third place, I've got Manchester United. Now, Manchester United have seen a dramatic reformation under Ten Hag and do look quite good, as much as that hurts me to say. United have further strengthened an already strong squad, bringing the likes of Rasmus Holland, who knows, Mason Mount and Andre Onana. They've returned to the Champions League, but like Liverpool, they're a side that are used to competing in Europe and in the league as well, and I'm sure they'll retain their spot in the top four. It'll be interesting to see how Holland adapts to the league. I still see United doing well. They've got a very strong squad and a lot of players who were in brilliant form last season. If they can carry that form into this season, again, they're going to do well. I don't think they'll break the top two. I think the top two sides are stronger than Manchester United, but we shall see. But yeah, I think they'll do quite well this season as well. Under Ten Hag, they are cooking for sure. And in second place, I've got Arsenal. Now, the Gunners came so close to winning the title last season, but stumbled at the final hurdle. They spent big this summer, not only to compete in the Champions League, but also in an attempt to overtake City and finally win their first Premier League title since 03-04. Unfortunately for them though, I can't see that happening. They've really splashed the cash though, dropping 105 million on Declan Rice, as well as bringing in Kai Havertz and Jurrien Timber too. Not sure about Kai Havertz, he never really cooked for Chelsea, and I'm not sure he'll cook for Arsenal either. Obviously depends on the position they play him in, but yeah, I'm not too confident Kai Havertz is going to cook for Arsenal. It's a very strong squad, and I can see them continuing to push City even harder than they did last season. Rice is an especially good signing for them, as he'll not only help their midfield, but also be a great presence in the dressing room for those younger players. I do think the Gunners will just fall short of their Premier League title though, but they're going to take it all the way with City this season. And finally, in first place, already kind of spoiled by my Arsenal prediction, but I've got Manchester City. Yes, I have Man City making it 4 in a row. The top 4 sides around them have all strengthened, but so has City themselves. They've lost important players like Gundogan and Mahrez, but brought in the likes of Josko Gvardiol and Mateo Kovacic to add some more power to what's already a really strong side. Haaland was nuts last season, scoring 36 goals, and I think he's only going to kick on and score even more this season. I would not be surprised to see him smash 40 goals, that's what I'm saying. Probably even 45, let's be real. Now, Manchester City won the treble last season, but will not be resting on their laurels as Arsenal look to take them close to the wire again. But I'm sure they'll keep pace with the Gunners and secure another Premier League title. I don't see anything else other than another Man City win, but Arsenal are going to take it to the wire. I can see that happening for sure. Very, very exciting season anyway. So yeah, those have been my Premier League predictions for the 23-24 season. I'm going to be interested to see how well I do at the end of the season, but I think Man City are pretty much nailed on for another Premier League title, but I think it's the closest it's been in a long time. But yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of new sides entering Europe as well, so it's going to be interesting how they perform both in the league and in Europe. But yeah, I'm pretty confident in these predictions. Obviously, they're predictions, they're not going to be correct. I mean, a lot of them will probably be wrong. The transfer information I've got here will have probably changed by the time this video goes out, so who knows what will happen. Maybe Nottingham Forest will finish first. I'd love that, I can't lie. Anyway, I've been over to GT. Hope you have enjoyed this video. If you've got your own predictions, leave them down below. Maybe tell me your bottom 3 squads and your top 3 squads. I'd love to hear what you guys are cooking. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.